Have you ever wondered what happens to the souls after death? I don't want to scare you, but there's a fact that could forever change your perception of life after death. Soviet General Yevgeny Liventsov, a man who experienced war, worked on secret military projects, and believed in science his whole life, made a sensational statement. He claimed that the soul's journey after death leads to a place that could even frighten ghosts. According to him, the deceased do not simply disappear into emptiness, but enter a space hidden from our eyes, where they either face purification or eternal penance. But the most frightening thing is what happens to the souls that fail the trial. How'd he know this? As Liventsov himself said, the answers were transmitted to him by a higher intelligence with whom he made contact after experiencing clinical death. What is this place? Where are billions of souls now? Why does this place even cause fear in those who have spent their whole lives researching the afterlife? Watch this video until the end, and you will learn the truth that has been hidden for centuries. When Evgenij Liventzov retired, it seemed that a peaceful life and well-deserved rest awaited him, far from the stress factors of military daily life. But fate had prepared a test for him that would change him forever. 2 years after his retirement, he suddenly suffered a stroke. The condition was so severe that the doctors just shrugged their shoulders. He was admitted to the military hospital named Burdenko, a place where the lives of soldiers and officers were saved and where every patient was fought for until their last breath. But even there, they gave him no chances. The medical reports noted deep coma, no reflexes, hopeless condition. The relatives were advised to prepare for the worst. It seemed that the general's days were numbered. But the strangest thing happened later. Liventsov said that at that moment, he felt neither pain, nor fear, nor horror. He only felt an unusual lightness, as if he no longer belonged to his body. And then, on the 9th day, when everyone had accepted the inevitable, the incomprehensible happened. His eyes suddenly opened, his breathing became steady, his heart beat steadily, and his body showed no signs of the stroke he had recently suffered. Imagine the shock of the doctors. These people had seen hundreds, if not thousands, of patients. They knew how diseases progress and understood that recovery after a severe stroke required months, sometimes years, of rehabilitation. But Liventsov didn't just regain consciousness. He seemed reborn. His body was in perfect condition, as if nothing had happened. So what happened during those 9 days? How could a man, from whom everyone had already mentally said goodbye, suddenly return to life without leaving the doctors a rational explanation? Only he knew the answer. Later, Liventsov confessed. During this time, his soul was beyond our world. He saw things that couldn't be explained by scientific means. He encountered the higher intelligence. This intelligence not only observed him, but it communicated with him. You will wake up on the 9th day. You will be healthy, it said. At that moment, Liventsov did not yet understand why exactly 9 days, why him in particular. But the most important thing, the prophecy came true. After his recovery, he was overcome by a strange, inexplicable urge to take a pen and paper. He simply sat at the table, and his hand began to write by itself. The most amazing thing was that he claimed these words did not originate in his head. They seemed to come from outside, flowing through him as if someone was guiding his hand. Thus, the first message of the higher intelligence was born. It was clear, disturbing, and at the same time mysterious. It spoke of the future, the fate of humanity, and what awaits the soul after death. But the most important thing was his mission. Liventsov realized that he had not simply returned to life. He was meant to convey something very important to the world. But would people believe him? For his story sounded too incredible to be true. What did the higher intelligence tell Yevgeny Liventsov? Its messages were not only revelations. They contained knowledge that could turn our understanding of existence upside down. They touched upon questions that had occupied humanity for centuries. Who are we? Where do we come from? And what awaits us after death? The higher intelligence described itself as a majestic, omnipresent, energetic structure that exists beyond human perception. It was not just an entity, not a collective mind, or a divine power. It was something entirely different, transcending our usual concepts. The higher intelligence was not tied to any specific place. It encompassed the entire solar system and extended beyond its boundaries. Liventsov could not exactly describe how he heard or saw it. These are not ordinary words or images. It was a stream of pure information that required no translation or interpretation. It simply entered his consciousness, and he immediately understood its essence. One of the most astonishing revelations was that the human soul is much more complex than we are used to thinking. The soul does not appear with birth and does not disappear with death. It always exists, goes through many phases, changes, and continues to evolve. Before birth, the higher intelligence shapes the program for the future life of the human soul. It is then that the main characteristics of personality, inclinations, and talents are determined. But this is not fate in the traditional sense, not a predetermined script, but rather a collection of data meant to help the soul pass certain trials. But why is all this necessary? The higher intelligence explained that human life is not a coincidence, but a chain of lessons that serves the development of the soul. Every person is given their own path, but the choice remains theirs. They can consciously walk this path and use the opportunities for spiritual growth, or they can reject them and focus on the material things of life. Animals are guided solely by instincts, but humans are different beings. They possess not only intellect, but also emotions, feelings, and intuition. All of this is the result of an extremely complex alignment of the soul that begins even before birth. Death, according to the higher intelligence, is not the end of existence. When a human leaves the material world, their soul does not disappear. It retains its individuality, memory, experience, and emotions. The soul does not dissolve into the universe or into nothingness, but transitions into a spiritual dimension where it continues to exist in another form. Liventsov understood that life is much more meaningful than it seems at first glance. His consciousness is only a small part of a vast process that encompasses not only our reality. The higher intelligence opened up this understanding to him. Why was this knowledge delivered to him? The answer was simple. Humanity was on the brink of danger, and someone had to deliver this warning. When human life ends, many believe that it is the final, the darkness, and the oblivion. But is that really the case? Liventsov described an astonishing, frightening, but at the same time majestic image of the afterlife. It turned out to be much more complex and multifaceted than we are used to thinking. When a human leaves life, the soul leaves the physical body and its true journey begins. Unlike the body, which remains in the material world, the soul retains its individuality, personality, and even memory. What is interesting, however, is that memory does not simply remain within the soul, but is duplicated. The higher intelligence explained that every soul has an energetic twin. This is a kind of subtle copy of the human consciousness, an archive that contains all the information about a person's life: thoughts, actions, emotions, fears, victories, defeats, even the deepest secrets that the person kept hidden. This twin does not disappear, but enters a special memory field, where the entire history of humanity is stored. Here are records of everyone who ever lived, loved, suffered, and felt. Everything that happened to people is preserved there, and nothing is lost. But what happens to the soul itself? This is where the most important part begins. The higher intelligence decides where it will go. The first place is the orbit of souls. This is the space of eternal regret. Those who spent their lives in evil, cruelty, and hatred are sent to the orbit of souls, a place not far from Earth. It follows the same orbit as the moon, but it remains invisible to the human eye. These souls do not go to hell, as often depicted in religious texts, but their existence becomes a punishment. There is no fire, no demons, or physical pain, but there is something much more terrifying: eternal regret. The soul experiences all its earthly actions over and over again. Imagine a criminal who inflicted pain on others during their life and destroyed destinies. Now, they must feel infinitely the very pain they once caused others. This pain is not physical. It is the pain of consciousness. The souls are confronted with their actions again and again, but not from their own perspective, but from the perspective of those they harmed, betrayed, or destroyed. It is like an endless dream in which one cannot escape their own mistakes. But there's an even more terrifying aspect. Sometimes souls in the orbit of souls cannot withstand it. They lose their integrity. Their energy dissipates into the cosmos, and then they disappear. This means their existence is over forever. The second place is the home of souls. This is a space of purification. However, not all souls are doomed to suffering. Those who lived a worthy life, who were honest and kind, who strove for light and understanding, reach the home of souls. This place is radically different from the orbit of souls. While the orbit is a zone of suffering, the home of souls is reminiscent of something harmonious and peaceful. The higher intelligence described the home of souls as a vast, elongated cylindrical structure floating in space. Its size is so immense that it corresponds to the diameter of the moon, yet remains invisible and unreachable for living beings. In this place, souls do not experience suffering, but instead purify themselves and free themselves from the heavy memories of earthly life, fears, insults, sadness, and worries. The souls begin to understand their true nature and realize that life in the physical body was only one stage on their journey. But what happens to them afterward? Some souls remain forever in the home of souls, achieving peace and becoming part of the grand plan of the universe. Others, however, return to the material world to undergo new trials, acquire new knowledge, and correct mistakes from previous lives. However, according to the higher intelligence, this cycle is not infinite. There are souls that have reached such a level of awareness that they no longer need to return. They enter another, higher world, the existence of which the higher intelligence only hinted at. Death is not an end, but a transition into a new reality, and what awaits people beyond death depends on how they live their lives. So why did the higher intelligence decide to pass this knowledge on to humanity? The reason was troubling. It was not merely an act of goodwill or an attempt to unveil the veil of secrets. Behind the revelations, there was a warning. Humanity stands on the edge of destruction. It was not only about physical destruction through catastrophes, wars, and climate changes. The danger stemmed from the spiritual essence of humanity, from its ability to think, feel, and create. Material values had displaced the most important spiritual guiding principles that had formed the foundation of the human soul for centuries. Power, money, pleasure, and comfort had become substitutes for inner growth, the pursuit of knowledge, and the desire to understand the world and oneself. People had lost the ability to ask important questions and had simply become consumers. Yet even more frightening was the fact that this process had become irreversible. The higher intelligence claimed that today's civilization was not the first. History knows many cycles of rise and fall, times when the world experienced a technological, powerful, and glorious peak, only to later destroy itself and be completely wiped out. From time to time, there was a reset and all traces of past civilizations disappeared. So, what happened to those who lived before us? Where are their cities, their knowledge, the traces of their existence? Why can't archaeologists find evidence of their existence? The answer was astonishing. Between civilizations, there were vast periods of time, up to 16,000 years, necessary for the Earth to recover after a catastrophe. But there was yet another frightening aspect. The higher intelligence tried to intervene by offering humanity opportunities, knowledge, and warnings. But each time, history repeated itself. People did not listen. They continued their destruction until they reached the point of no return. And now, this moment is approaching again. The greatest enemy of humanity is greed. The higher intelligence explained that greed is the most destructive force affecting human consciousness. It clouds the mind and transforms humans into creatures governed solely by instincts. Greed blurs the boundary between reason and animal nature, compelling people to destroy the world around them, wage wars, betray one another, and destroy spiritual knowledge. It was precisely this greed that led to the fall and collapse of civilizations. The higher intelligence repeatedly attempted to change this order by sending knowledge to people who could break the cycle. But every time, history repeated itself. And now, the main question arises: will we manage to stop it in time, or will we once again repeat the fate of those who came before us? Many skeptics claim that the spiritual world is just an illusion, a product of the imagination. But then the question arises: where do premonitions come from? Why does a voice sometimes emerge within us that warns us of danger, and by listening to it, we avoid misfortune? Why are there cases in history where scientists, artists, poets, and thinkers suddenly receive ideas that radically change the world? The higher intelligence provided an explanation for these phenomena. It spoke of a thinking doppelganger, an entity that accompanies a person from birth to death. This doppelganger is not a copy of the body, a ghost, or an astral projection. It is an energetic structure deeply connected to the person's consciousness. The doppelganger knows everything about its owner: their fears, weaknesses, dreams, and worries. It observes and analyzes. But most importantly, it warns. When a person faces a choice or danger, the doppelganger sends signals. Sometimes it's a feeling of anxiety or inexplicable fear. Sometimes a persistent inner voice saying, "Don't go there, don't do this, stop." Why don't people always listen to this voice? The higher intelligence explained that modern humans have lost their connection to the spiritual sphere. In the pursuit of material wealth, they have stopped listening to their intuition, silencing the inner voice, and lost trust in themselves. Enlightenment, a mysterious phenomenon the higher intelligence spoke of. Sometimes a thought comes to a person so complex and complete that it seems like it didn't come from them. Great scientists and inventors have reported such moments. For example, Nikola Tesla claimed that he saw the finished designs of his devices in his head before even starting their development. Dmitry Mendeleev said that the periodic table of elements came to him in a dream. Where do these ideas come from? The higher intelligence argued that this is not the product of a human brain. True enlightenment is information that comes from higher spheres, the cosmos, the spiritual world, and the higher intelligence itself. Some people can consciously interact with this world. They are called clairvoyants, mediums, or prophets. They not only sense premonitions, but they can interact with the spiritual world, receive information, and perceive the energy of others. However, this gift is not just a privilege. It requires great sacrifices. The higher intelligence warned that those with this ability pay a high price for it. Their life energy is consumed faster than that of ordinary people. They are subjected to immense strain, and their physical bodies do not always withstand the contacts with spiritual forces. Many clairvoyants do not live long and suffer from illness, depression, and exhaustion. The gift can become a curse if it is not used for the greater good. Evgenij Livenzov did not consider himself a clairvoyant, but he was convinced that his knowledge was not given to him by chance. The higher intelligence was attempting to convey the most important message: humanity is on the brink. Only awareness of one's spiritual nature can save it. But will people hear this voice? Or will they, as always, ignore the warnings and continue down the path of destruction? The answer to this question lies with each of us.